We are the Muslim Ummah, and each day that goes by, the harder we try. In gratitude we pray to Allah. Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam. Each man at each hour, in awe of his power, each flower, each tree.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To our 10th episode, welcome to our 10th episode, Europe's Forgotten Islamic Heritage, in that case Europe's Forgotten Ottoman Heritage. I'm Dr. Abu Yasser, Stef Keris. Now I've written a book which is pretty much focusing on the Ottoman heritage and focusing on the part that we're going to discuss today, inshallah. At least one of the episodes today. This episode is focusing on the northern part of Greece, my home country. Now, Greece has, of course, seeing that it was more than 400 years part of the Ottoman Empire, it has, of course, a lot to show and a lot to offer. People don't know that really. But first of all, let's take a look at where Greece is, just to make sure that everybody understands that. Now, look at the map that we had before already. Now, the map of Europe, which actually shows you Greece all the way in the south, of course, in red. Now, in between Turkey and Italy. Italy is the boot, the yellow country. Next to Italy, Greece, and then Turkey. So we're talking about Greece. Mediterranean Sea, we can see Greece again in the Mediterranean Sea, just a more detailed map in that case. And this one is Greece now, the map of Greece. Now we will talk, inshallah, about, we are going to discuss the issue of Thrace. Hopefully you can see Thrace all the way in the north of the blue map. This is the entire map of Greece. All the way in the northeast of the map, you see Thrace, northeast. A big area, a big province of Greece. Thrace next to Macedonia, the biggest province. Now this area, as you can imagine, it borders to Turkey and Bulgaria. So this, of course, is an issue. As you can imagine, we have discussed several issues before in the past in other episodes with regards to the Ottoman Empire and the Balkan. And we've discussed also the attitude of the Balkan Christians towards the Muslims. Now, we have mentioned a little bit something about Bulgaria and Bulgarians. Now Turkey, Bulgaria, exactly at the border of Thrace. Thrace was a very, very, very hot area, and it actually still is a hot area with regards to the political situation, with regards to the way that things are nowadays actually. Now, Thrace, all the way in the north of Greece, at the border to Turkey and Bulgaria. It has a Turkish minority, a Turkish-speaking Muslim minority, a Pomak minority, which is actually a Bulgarian-speaking minority. Pomak is nothing else but a Bulgarian dialect. And it has Gypsies and, of course, Greeks, Greek Orthodox Christians. The Gypsies are considered Muslims, at least most of them are considered Muslims. So the Muslim population in that area is divided into three: Gypsies, Pomaks, and Turkish speakers. So you can imagine that this has created, or had created in the past, problems, unfortunately, although it doesn't have to, of course. Now, I would like you to take a look at the following video, which is a scene taken out of my documentary, which I had the chance to make when I was in Greece 2 years ago. And I will show you there, inshallah, what Komotini is about. Standing quite in a very traditional area here, next to the mosque, next to the Mufti, the office of the Mufti. And it's quite interesting to see the very little shops that are next to the mosque, next to the office of the Mufti, they have traditional artwork, which the Ottomans have actually left behind. And the people who live here still follow the traditional way, the way it was that the forefathers and fathers have left behind. One very nice and interesting thing to see is that if you look around the signboards, you are able to read in Greek, if you can read in Greek. For example, this one, the owner of the shop is called Hossein Tuncay, and it's written in Greek. It's interesting how these names that are traditional Islamic names are written with the Greek alphabet. It is something which is very uncommon and unusual, but obviously in this area not. In the city of Yanina, there are some masterpieces by people who have learned how to work with iron as well as with silver, and we'll be able to see that also. These products here are copper and tin. And if you look at certain of these bowls that are being sold here, is the way that if, as a Muslim, before you start eating or after you have eaten, you wash your hands. Imagine you're a guest as a Muslim at the Muslim's place. They normally bring you a bowl with water in there, and you can wash your hands before you start your food or after you're finished eating. Well, as you have seen, that gives you a little bit an idea of Komotini, the unofficial capital of the Muslims in Greece. Now, unofficial capital in that way that 50% of the people living in Komotini, in this very city that you just saw, are Muslims. Divided, as we mentioned before, in these three groups. I dare saying that there is a fourth group. I dare saying that. There is a fourth group which is actually not more than 1,000 people who originally come from Africa. Originally they came from a place in Africa, and we don't know exactly where from. If it was now Sudan, if it was Egypt, if it was one of the places northwest or north or west Africa, north or northeast Africa. Now, they themselves don't even know where they come from originally, but there are some ideas that they might have come together with the British, when the British were there, brought them with them from Anglo-Sudan. They might have also come during the time of the Ottoman Empire. So we don't know exactly. That's a fourth group. Very interesting. And you know what? Many Greeks don't even know that. Now, Komotini again, the capital of the Muslims in the north of Greece, in Thrace. Thrace came under Ottoman rule in 1363-1364 and became part of Greece, of the independent Greece, in 1920. Another street scene I would like to show you now gives you again a better idea of what I was talking about before when I said look at the Muslims owning shops and their names written in Greek and everything. Now this street scene will show you a little bit better what Muslim shops look like in Thrace. Now, as you can see,
here they're selling sujuk, lokum. There is all Turkish products.
As we have seen, this video gives you a little bit an indication of the Muslims in the north of Greece, in Thrace. Now, of course, many of you might think like, where were the Muslims? We didn't see a lot. But imagine nowadays there has been quite an assimilationist policy going on in the Balkans, and they have really assimilated into the mainstream population. You won't recognize many Muslims anymore up there, as it used to be in Bosnia before the war. But Komotini is a very interesting city, simply because it has 50-50 more or less. The population is 50-50. And 50% Muslims, 50% Christians. But throughout history, Komotini and the whole area of Thrace have played an important role. They were all the center of a lot of bloodshed, unfortunately, especially during the Balkan Wars, but even after the Balkan Wars, 1912, 1913, the First World War, 1914 to 1918, 1920, when it became part of Greece, when finally this area, Thrace, became part of Greece. 1923, the big exchange of populations. Now, this is a very sad part of our history, a very sad part of history, the history of the Balkans, the history of Greece, and the history of the Muslims in that area. This is something I would like to go deeper in our next part, actually. Before we go for a break, one last thing I would like to remind you. When the Muslims in the Balkan, when they had become very weak, Allah did one thing. He punished them basically with war. And if you look at Bosnia, if you imagine, I have a lot of friends from Bosnia who tell me how it used to be before the war. Barely any woman would wear hijab. Barely any man would even go for salah. The mosques were empty. Many imams would even drink raki, which is 70% alcohol. Ouzo in Greece. Now, this is something that after the war changed. Now, the question is, do we need a war in order to come back to our Islamic tradition, to our Islam, to our way of life as Muslims, something we owe Allah? This is something I give you for the break to think about. And inshallah, I'll see you after the break. Assalamu alaikum.
Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam.
If I think I lost my ablution, but I'm not sure, do I have to make wudu again? Is it allowed for Muslims to visit the graveyard, or is that shirk? Am I allowed to say Jummah Mubarak to someone? Can I get to know a sister before marriage? I have so many questions, and I feel that I've just reached a dead end. If only I could find someone trustworthy to answer my questions. Someone who speaks based on proof from the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet.
Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam.
And welcome back again to the second part of Europe's Islamic, forgotten Islamic heritage. And we are focusing pretty much in this episode on northern Greece, Thrace. Thrace, the area which has gone through a lot of troubles, a lot of problems, a lot of bloodshed, unfortunately. Why? Because of the whole issue of hatred from certain particular peoples. Now, if we take a look at Komotini again, the capital that I was talking about of the Muslims, the unofficial capital of the Muslims, let's not take it exactly like this, because otherwise I will have later comments about what did Abu Yasser, what did Stef Keris say there, talking about a capital which doesn't exist. It is the unofficial capital of the Muslims in northern Greece, in Thrace. And I would like to take you through a small tour through the old part of Komotini. There's the entrance, the front entrance of the mosque, the Yeni Jami, which is the new mosque, the exact translation of it, Yeni Jami. And we're going to another mosque which is called Eski Jami, which simply means old mosque. These two are actually landmarks for the city. No, all this here, this whole area here, everything, this is actually all traditional, very traditional. And everything has stayed as it was several years ago. Well, what am I saying? Centuries ago. We're talking about Ottoman Empire. Some of the shops are very traditional. Some have changed, of course, renovated. A lot of things have taken part here the last couple of centuries, actually. Now, if you take a look at the building right next to, in front of me, the number 56, it says, this was founded in 1926. Do you see the wooden architecture? Very interesting, very different to the rest of Greece. I need to find out where the old mosque is now. The Eski Jami is actually at the end of this part of the old part of the city. There is another part which is going to start very soon, some meters from here, which is the more modern one, the more Greek, let's call it that way. I actually have been here, the last time that I was in this city was around 2.5 years ago. Visited some of my friends. Hopefully I will be able to see them again there. We had some tea, some coffee, wonderful people. Well, as you have seen, I visited Komotini a second and a third time after that, and things indeed, alhamdulillah, have changed. It's not as it used to be, that the Muslims were scared of opening their mouths, and still there were some issues tensions between the Muslim and Christian population. As I said, it's 50-50. Alhamdulillah, things have improved, I must say, in general. And the Mufti of Komotini, one of them is Mufti of Komotini. There's another city which is called Xanthi, right next to this actually. The Mufti of Xanthi and Mufti of Komotini, they both come from a very small place which is called Echinos. Now Echinos is in the province of Xanthi, where this little town of Echinos has 100% Muslims. All of them are Muslims, but all of them are of Pomak origin. You can see here the cemetery of Echinos, actually, right in front of Echinos, and you have, alhamdulillah, it's a beautiful view of the whole town. Well, it's a bigger village or a smaller town, as you want to call it, and it has, as I said, 100% Pomak Muslims. What does it mean, Pomak, again? Pomak means that they are Bulgarian-speaking Pomak. The Pomak language is a Bulgarian dialect. And these people are very, 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 very close to the Bulgarian border. Now, interesting to know that this place could not be visited until 1996. There was actually a fence, a border fence there, where people could not go in or come out unless the border guards would know it. In the country of Greece, that was within Greece. It was not Bulgaria, it was not another country, it was still Greece. But because of the proximity of Bulgaria, the Greek authorities had closed this Echinos, this little town, and the people of Echinos were not allowed, there was a curfew, they were not allowed to actually leave Echinos after a certain time of the day. Now, Echinos is one of the typical examples of 100% Pomakochori, as they call it in Greek. Pomakochori, a village of Pomaks, a Pomak village in Greece. We have several of them, especially in Xanthi and the area of Xanthi. Xanthi is different to Komotini in a way that Komotini, within the same city, there is a 50-50 division. There are 50% Muslims living within the same city. But in Xanthi, we have a smaller percentage of Muslims living within the city, whereas outside of the city of Xanthi, we have quite some Pomakohoria, quite some villages of Pomaks who are all Muslims. As I mentioned before, it's close to the Bulgarian border. Now, why did the Greek government feel that they had to put a border within their own country? Simply because of the past again. Look how important history is. In order to understand what happened, Bulgaria had got the right for a while to actually cover that area and to rule the area of Thrace. As a result of the war, the Balkan War, the Treaty of Bucharest granted most of Western Thrace to Bulgaria in 1913 until basically 1919. And then it was ruled, this area of Thrace was ruled between 1919 and 1920 by a mixed allied Greek administration until in the end Thrace became a part of Greece as we know it nowadays, and since 1920 has been a part of Greece with a strong Muslim presence. And the Islamic element there, of course, is very strong still. The Ottoman element, the Ottoman heritage, can be seen everywhere there, and we would be able to fill full episodes of Komotini and Xanthi and of all these villages there, which is beautiful to go and see. And I had the chance 2 years ago to actually do the documentary which includes these villages. So it is something that I think should make us think, because many of us within the European Union, even people who live within the European Union, Europeans who think know Greece, there are certain parts they don't know at all. And something new that I mentioned today to all of them, or most of them, the fourth group that I mentioned, who originally come from Africa, the fourth group of Muslims who live in certain villages in Xanthi again, in these areas. And these villages are entirely inhabited by Muslims. Again, what is typical Balkan, you will see a village entirely inhabited by Muslims next to a village entirely inhabited by Christians. But again, you will find a third village which has a church next to a mosque. And this is again something which you will find in quite some parts of the Balkan, especially in Bosnia, but also in the north of Greece, in Thrace, in this part where we have just been, in Thrace. Now, Thrace is a very interesting part of Greece, and alhamdulillah, finally, we have the chance as tourists even to go and visit Thrace. Before, some years ago, actually, it was a problem, as I said, due to the threat of Bulgaria and Turkey still. Bulgaria has become an EU partner, a NATO and an EU partner now, and Greece does not feel, I mean, of course, cannot feel a threat coming from Bulgaria, seeing that they are both within the European Union, trade partners, and they have to deal with each other, of course. Turkey is another issue, is another story. With Turkey still there is hostility, still there are issues, also because of the problem with Cyprus, as some of you might know. Cyprus had been divided into two parts. We will talk about it inshallah in another episode, which we dedicate entirely to Cyprus. But all this plays an important role, and that's why I keep saying, that's why we have to understand how important it is that we have to look into our history, and in order to understand political structures, in order to understand what's happening around us nowadays. We should not be just focusing on the present, but look to the past in order to improve the future. So inshallah, I'm hoping that this is something that will make us think, and hopefully also this episode has made you think. So last but not least, the area of Thrace has a third city. Quickly, one about the third city, Alexandroupolis, which is one of the cities which carries the name of Alexander the Great. like Alexandria in Egypt. Now, there is an Alexandroupolis in Greece, in the north of Greece, Alexandroupolis. And it's a city in Thrace. And this city is actually the first bigger city. When you come from Turkey and you enter into Greece, you will have to pass Alexandroupolis. Alexandroupolis still has one mosque, central mosque, where people can still go and worship. But furthermore, there is not a lot of Islamic or Ottoman heritage that can be seen in Alexandroupolis still. It is a border town. It is a town that reminds you of business. There is a lot of trade and business happening, and which is positive, of course, which is positive. And many of the Greeks, despite the situation, the political hostility between Greece and Turkey, many of the Greeks living at the borders, they actually love going over the border just for a day, go to Edirne, which used to be Adrianoupolis, Edirne at the border to Turkey, Turkish city nowadays. Just go shopping, come back and go on with the business. Now, mashallah, that's how actually neighbors should deal with each other. They should work with each other. They should operate with each other. They should cooperate, and they should actually do business with each other. And I'm hoping that for the future, this will also bring better relationship for the future, as Bulgaria has opened to Greece and Greece has opened to Bulgaria. Hopefully also, inshallah, Greece will open to Turkey, inshallah. Now, I would like to thank you for your interest, and inshallah, episode 11 is going on with Greece, inshallah. Jazakumullahu khair. Thank you very much for watching.
We are the Muslim Ummah, and each day that goes by, the harder we try. In gratitude we pray to Allah. Chosen as part of the best of mankind, we spread the word of Islam. Each man at each hour, in awe of his power, each flower, each tree, everything that we see. Spread the word, oh man. Spread the word of Islam. Oh, fortunate one, paradise must be